Welcome back to the Pediatric Speech Sister Saturdays Live. I am so excited to have here Jena Castro-Casbon. She is the owner and founder of the Independent Clinician, and I'm definitely fangirling Jena because I am a part of Independent Clinician, and you have just been just a blessing, honestly. And I'm sure that many speech pathologists can say the same. And just having you around, even with your free products and just honestly your whole essence, letting people know that they can start their own private practices, that they don't have to be stuck in their school base or their outpatient positions or hospital positions. So I'm so excited to learn from you and hear about your story. It is Pride Month, so I know that you are also out and openly gay. And I know that right now we're in times where, thank God, people are more inclusive when it comes to the LGBTQ community. But at the same time, there are those who have really had to triumph. And so I wanted to know your story and how you triumphed and became an entrepreneur who you are today.
Yeah, I'm an open book, so happy to share, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So, Jena, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to introduce yourself. And if you can let us know your why. Why did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my name is Jena Castro-Casbon. I'm a speech pathologist. I live right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, with my wife and our two little boys. And I've been an SLP now for 20 years. And when I first started, actually, that's not true, 18 years. I'm also no good at math. When I first started in the field, I got my dream job working at a rehabilitation hospital. I know you like peds, I like adults, but I wanted to work in an outpatient facility, and I was really lucky to have that as my CF. And then I stayed there for a couple of years, but it was right after my CF, about 9 months post CF, that I got my first opportunity to work with a private client. And it was something that I had never thought about. I mean, I'd sort of thought about private practice maybe like, way later, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, when I was older and ready. Um, but this opportunity came by, and I remember two of my colleagues were kind of talking to me about it, and they said, well, why don't you do it? And I remember looking at them and being like, I'm 26. Like, I think I'm too young to do this. And they're like, well, if you have an opportunity and if they asked you to work with them, then clearly like they believe in you. And so you should do it. And they had both had private practices when they were more like my age at the time. I think they were maybe in their 40s. And I also called my dad. My dad's a businessman, and he always wanted me to go into business. And so when I told him, Dad, I don't want to be a business person, I'm a helping people person, and I want to be a speech therapist. He's like, oh, well, maybe one day you'll have a business. And so I was like, oh, God, Dad, okay, maybe, but again, like later in my career. So when I called my dad and I said, Dad, I have this chance to see a private client, like, what do you think? And he was like, oh my gosh, go for it. Like, what a great opportunity. Like, you should say yes. And so I did. And it was an amazing experience. And I got started seeing private clients on the side of my job at the hospital, which was really important because that dream job was quickly turning out not to be the dream job that I thought it was going to be. And so seeing private clients gave me an outlet. It allowed me to, be my own boss, if only for a few hours a week, and see private clients that I absolutely loved. And so what I ended up doing was basically like learning as much as I could. And then people started asking me how I was doing it. And so I shared, with the people who I knew like in person. But then I started to realize, wow, I bet you there's other SLPs like on the internet who might want to know this stuff too. And so I started a company called the Independent Clinician back in 2008. So I've been doing this for a really long time. And I just started walking people step by step through the process in the same way that I had wished that someone had walked me step by step through the process, because we don't really learn about this stuff in grad school. And, SLPs love to follow, like, we're rule followers, right? And people love to follow, plans and cross their T's and dot their I's and everything else. And so that's basically what I do. I help SLPs and now OTs start and grow private practices step by step.
That is a fabulous story, Jenna. Some things that came up for me is I might have been one of the few programs. I went to Howard, and so they do have a private
Oh,
practice program there. But of course, it's, you kind of go through it. Thank God I at least had that business plan down as part of the project that we had. But at the end of the day, it's a class while you're going through your clinical externships and all of those things. So when I graduated, just like what you said, it always seemed like it was down the road. Okay, well, eventually I'll start. Let me just get more experience under my belt. So I want to ask you from your experience and after coaching, how many people have you coached?
Well,
Estimated.
so in the Start Your Private Practice program, which is our beginner level program, we've had almost 2,700 people come through that program. So in that specific program, I'll say 2,700, but like total, hard to tell, like thousand or even more thousands than that. Lots.
So from those thousands, can you
Yeah.
think of the top reasons why people are scared or hesitant to start their own private practices?
Yes, absolutely. The number one reason comes down to self-doubt. So
Mhm.
it's not even about, everyone loves to get their ducks in a row. No one wants to make a mistake. People use a lot of like practical reasons why they can't do it, right? Like, oh, I have kids. I can't do it.
Mm.
Or I don't want to let go of my steady pay and benefits or my pension, right? And those are really good reasons. Like I'm not trying to minimize those reasons at all, but what I'm trying to help people see is that you can do a part-time private practice on the side of your job. So you don't have to go without steady pay and benefits, right? You can keep your regular job and then basically add like everyone's into multiple streams of income these days, right? And so seeing private clients is like adding another stream of income, right? So I'd say that, a lot of times people say things like, I don't want to make any mistakes. I don't want to end up in SLP jail, right? I get that one a lot. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, I can teach you like all of the things you can put in place, like, so you're set up like legally and everything.
Mhm.
Um, but no matter what, I think that a lot of those like practical reasons why people say that they can't do it are, I'm going to use the word excuses, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that in a way like it's a way to say, I can't do that. But really, what they're often saying is, I don't know that I'm ready or that I would be a good business person, or, I don't have a business background. I don't have experience because SLPs are wonderful people and no one wants to make a mistake. No one wants to do something wrong. And I appreciate that. Right. But
Mhm.
the alternative is that there's a lot of people trying to like DIY their way through private practice and kind of guess their way through private practice. And I see a lot of people posting things in Facebook groups, including my free Facebook group. And I'm just like, "Ugh," like, that's not the way to do it. Or, if you just let me show you exactly how to do this, we can save so much time and money versus, struggling to figure stuff out and accidentally skipping steps.
Mhm. Yes. Thank you for that. I like how you said SLP jail. So I'm like, what is it? What exactly does that mean? But you're right. That's scary. We have when we're in the schools or if we have our regular job,
Yeah.
we have the security of that company.
Yeah.
So even with malpractice insurance and everything, so to speak, if we get sued, it's not us getting sued, it's the company getting sued. And we don't want our face on an ASHA as public enemy number one. So I do like how you said that.
Right.
That is something I didn't even.
It comes down to not doing anything unethical or harmful and making sure that you have things like professional liability insurance, that you're following the code of ethics, that you don't hurt someone, right? All of these things that like people know not to do, but they oftentimes like blow things up in their heads about, like, oh my gosh, what if I make a mistake and lose my license? And it's like, you're only going to lose your license like if you do something wrong, like that you knew was wrong and intentionally bad. And really, most SLPs would never do anything like that. So the chances of, having something really bad happen like that are so slim. But a lot of people like stop themselves from starting because of fears like that.
So that brings me to my next question. We talk a lot about fears, and part of the reason why I brought you on is because just being a part of underserved, marginalized communities,
Yeah.
it is hard to take those extra steps. I think that across the board, takes a lot of grit to step out and start your own businesses. But especially when society kind of tells you that you're not worthy on a day-to-day basis for whatever it is, just for being out of the status quo.
Yeah.
So my first question to you about that is, has that ever been a thought on your mind when you started your private practice and when you just started being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think in the early days, it was something that made me possibly a little bit nervous. Like, do you like come out to private clients? Do you put anything about that on your website, right? Like some of those, kind of things. But I'll also share that I know lots of people who are from marginalized communities who are not treated particularly well in regular jobs, like in school systems and hospital systems. A lot of people face discrimination, microaggressions, all kinds of other stuff in by working for systems that are meant to serve them and their clients, but they're not feeling like, particularly well treated in a lot of cases. And sometimes people feel like their clients or people on their caseload aren't being treated well either. And so I also see private practice as a way to start your own system, right? If the system that you're working for isn't working for you for whatever reason, then like start your own system, right? Because we've all tried to change systems. Like we've all tried really hard to make things better in schools, make things better at hospitals. And sometimes it's just really hard and exhausting to do that, right? And so like if you then decide, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go start my own thing. And that's what I'm seeing more and more people doing, like, after trying a little bit, but then being like, you know what, this is not working. I'm going to start my own system through my own private practice. And that's kind of what I did and what I'm helping a lot of people do. And that feels really good to a lot of people.
And Jena, as you're talking, I'm just thinking how I'm very happy that you are here and to put these feelings and thoughts into words. Because one thing that comes to my mind, and when I was in the schools and working, I started this field to help close the academic achievement gap and in the school to prison pipeline. But I would always tell people that the education system is such a well-oiled machine that it's very hard to do that from the inside. So yes, like what you said, having that creativity to create your own systems, there's just so much freedom in that and so much joy.
Well, yeah, and it's also another thing I think that sometimes surprises people is, clinicians often, their caseloads are not exactly like who they are, right? Like maybe, and they may want to work with more people who are more similar to them, right? And so that's another thing is through your private practice, like let's just say you're a bilingual SLP, right? And your caseload doesn't have many bilingual kids on it, but there's a tremendous need for bilingual services. So like start your own private practice and serve that population, right? If those are the people that are going without services or are stuck on wait lists because there's only a handful of bilingual providers, then why not be that bilingual provider that that your community needs, right? And so I think a lot of people really want to serve whatever population they're a part of also. And so again, the best way to do that is by starting your practice and then like marketing to those clients so that that's who fills up your caseload, right? I have a lot of friends who are also like out business owners who say that on their website, right? That they're a safe space, right? Or that they're LGBT part of the community or affirming or whatever. And I know that when some clients go to that person's website, like if they like that and either they're part of their community or they respect that, then they're much more likely to sign up for that provider, right? If they're not, they're going to go find someone else, and that's okay too, right? That's why I'm really all about people leading with their values so that people can self-select, right? And so I think that's really important, like from a marketing perspective, is to tell people like who you are and what you're about. And the people who like that will be attracted to you. And the people who don't will like run the other way. And that's okay because you want them to.
I really appreciate that point. a lot of what's coming in my mind is sadly the statistics and the disparities, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community and being fearful, sadly,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to speech pathologists too,
Yeah.
and healthcare and just seeking those services. So I'm sure that at least seeing gender affirming anything like that has really changed the hearts of people. You did mention micro. Oh, my plant, my big old 100-pound puppy just came to say hi to us. So he knocked over my plant. So you did mention microaggressions earlier. Has that been anything that you've had challenges with during your career?
Yes, but I'll say thankfully not a lot. But the one time I'll say that it came up that put me in a kind of funny position, and I made a decision that I, looking back on it, don't know that it was the right decision. But one of my very first early private clients was a gentleman with aphasia, and I did like an interview with his wife on the phone, and I felt like I could really help him. And I went to their house, and as I was kind of getting to know them, I realized that they were Mormon, right? That was their religion. And it was interesting because, at the time, I think that Mormons have changed a little bit in some of their views, but, I just didn't know if they would like that that I was a gay SLP. I don't know. And ironically, I was getting married like 2 months
Mm.
after I started working with them. And so I felt really conflicted, married, to a woman specifically. And I felt really conflicted about like coming out to them. And like, so I remember like telling them that I was going to be gone for 2 weeks because I was getting married. And of course they assumed that I had a husband, right? So they said, oh, like, what's your husband's name? And I totally panicked and I made up some name. Like, I don't even remember, John or something. I don't know. So I kind of had this like fake husband for this private client relationship because it was very early in my private practice, and I liked working with them, and I was nervous to lose a client. But I also felt very conflicted about the whole experience and about lying about who I was and everything else. So after that experience, I made the decision to basically never do that again and just make sure that I was really like out from the very beginning. I made some changes to my website. I started just like casually dropping stuff about my wife. It's a lot easier as a queer person if you're in a relationship and you can like, say stuff about your same-sex partner. And so anyway, I just made that conscious decision to never be in a situation where someone who was hiring me didn't know about that aspect of my life and could make a decision about whether or not they wanted to work with me.
And I want to ask you a question, really just in particular about how you felt after you left that situation. So, for example, in a sense, having to lie about your identity, what feelings came up for you, and how did that fuel the fire to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna be completely out?
Yeah, I mean, I felt really ashamed. I felt like I was, kind of like back in the closet, and I hadn't been in the closet in a really long time. And that kind of was hard. And then actually, I'll tell you, Melanie, it kind of happened a second time, but in a different way. So after Sarah and I got married, so this was actually probably within the same year as the first part of the story. We moved back home to New Orleans, which is where I'm from, and I knew we weren't going to stay long, so I didn't restart my private practice. I continued to see my clients here via teletherapy, but I decided just to get kind of like a regular job at a skilled nursing facility, and so that's what I did. But I remember also like, oh my gosh, like the whole coming out to my coworkers thing, and which was so silly because I was married and like what did I care, but nonetheless I was nervous about it because I'm from New Orleans. New Orleans has like some liberal parts to it but also some very conservative parts to it, and so I was like kind of like back in the closet again, and like whenever you're with new coworkers never kind of know what to do about some of those things sometimes. And so luckily about 2 or 3 weeks into my working there, I my one of the people was pregnant and was having a baby, and we're having a baby shower for her. And so my wife is like, oh, how about I make those Oreo cupcakes and you can bring them to the baby shower? And I was like, oh my God, great. And so I bring these cupcakes and everyone's like, oh my God, these cupcakes are so good. Like, did you make them or whatever? Can I get the recipe? I was like, oh yeah, like my wife made them. And people are like, oh my God, they're the best cupcakes ever. And so I always tell people, like, if you need a reason to come out, like everyone loves food. And so like, if you just sort of like lead in with food or whatever, and then you just whatever, people like almost don't even hear the second part or really don't care because you just gave them a really good cupcake.
Wow, that is a really great coming out hack, Jena. Thank you so much.
Yes. You're welcome. Anyone can use that one. It's really good. I recommend it. It worked for me.
I also really hope that you bring those cupcakes to Asha this year. Are you going?
Oh, I'm definitely going because it's in Boston, which I'm so y'all, I got super lucky because it was in New Orleans last year, which is where my family is. And so and it was my first time having a booth this last year. So I was able to like ship all of my stuff down to my parents. That was amazing. And this year it's in Boston, and so I'll be able to like drop my kids off at school and then head into the convention. I'm so excited.
That is exciting. And then that was another thing I wanted to ask is what made you move to the north from the south?
Oh, because it's too hot in the South. I'm a kind of person, I do not do well when I'm hot. Like, hopefully you guys can't hear it because I've got this noise canceling microphone thing, but like I've got an air conditioner going in my office right now. I turn into kind of like the Incredible Hulk a little bit when I'm hot. I'm a really nice, well-mannered person, but when I get hot, I get a little crazy. So anyway, I had to leave the South. For a couple of reasons. I guess one was the heat for sure. The other was the politics, right? Like I couldn't I didn't think I would be comfortable raising my family there. And I had gone to grad school in Massachusetts. I loved Massachusetts. My wife was here and her family is all here. So we made the decision to like lay down roots and everything and have our kids here. And I'm telling you, it's when I first moved to Massachusetts. So in 2003, I moved to Massachusetts for graduate school. I went to Emerson College, and I was so excited to move to Boston and like go to the LGBTQ like community center, right? And I showed up, and there was no community center, and I was like, oh my gosh, whatever. Well, it's because they kind of didn't need it here. Like it was already so normal in a way to for I don't know, for gay people to just be, it was just normal, right? And so like there didn't have to be those community centers like there often like kind of have to be in other places. And so, you know, it's interesting because it's kind of what you want, right? You want everything to be like totally normal, but at the same time, I think that that makes it a little harder to find community if your community is all kind of mixed in.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'll say that it's a blessing. I'm not complaining about it. I know there's lots of other places that are not like this at all, right? But it's just been like sort of interesting to me that it's not always easy to find like gay friends because I don't know, everyone's just kind of blended in, which again is nice, but it also is kind of nice to be with people who have a shared experience.
And thank you for that. I want to also ask, you said it's not easy to find gay friends. Would you say it's easy to find gay colleagues in our field or at least a community that you can lean on when it comes to
No, not real. I'd say not really. I mean, sometimes now, like, you know, with social media and Instagram and whatnot, yes, like for sure, that has made. There's an awesome Facebook group. So yeah, there's ways to find people that way, but I think that there's still, and maybe this will change, right? I feel like you know, younger generations are either you know coming out earlier or you know more open to just kind of being you know queer, kind of you know whatever, and so I think that now it's probably easier, but like I know when I was in grad school, so I was in grad school 2003 to 2005, like I was the only gay person in my class. There was another girl a year ahead of me and behind me. All of the boys were straight at that time, but there weren't that many boys. There was only like one or two of them. So yeah, it was kind of hard to find people to be friends with.
I like how you said at that time, because I know that honestly, a lot of people are queer. We just
Yeah.
But it is a bit harder to come out because of just like what we're talking about here on the show.
Yeah.
Um, so just a few more questions for you today, Jena, because I know that you are packing up.
Yeah,
So
everyone, I'm moving. So anyway, I was telling Melanie before we started recording this lovely background that all of y'all have gotten to know and hopefully love is moving to a new house. So I'm right now in the process of figuring out what my new background is going to look like. But I was supposed to have packed my office yesterday, and I told my wife I can't. I've got one more live with Melanie, and I can't change it yet. So I promise I'll pack up tomorrow. But anyway, Melanie, I had to save it for you.
I'm honestly really honored that I got to be an excuse for you not packing. So thank you, Jena. So, what are some ways that we can be a lot more cultural responsive to our LGBTQ colleagues, neighbors, clients, and families?
Yeah, well, I think one easy way is just to not assume that people are in like heterosexual relationships, right? Just, to just kind of more ask people like, oh, like, are you dating anyone? Or do you have a partner? Or like, I don't know, just to use a little bit more inclusive language. I think that, adding pronouns behind names like really shows that you're just like a safe person, whether or not you identify as being like transgender or anything or non-binary. I think it's just kind of is a really nice way to show people that you're at least like thinking about that. And so I think that that's really important. I think as business owners, like, and I know that there is some privilege in saying this, but if at all possible to lead with those values and just like lead with being out, because I would much rather have the people who are in my programs and whatnot like know exactly like my whole story, right? And like who I am and who is helping them too. And if you don't want my help for whatever reason, because I'm, even though I can help you like a lot with the whole business thing, if you don't want help from a gay person, okay, then that's okay. But I would much rather have people know that in advance and truly make that decision to say like, oh no, I do want to do, business with you. I do want you to help me and everything else. So but I know that that's not safe for everyone, and it's either not safe because of where people live, like different places in the country. It may not be like psychologically safe for people, but if people are able to come out, I think it's great, and especially as a business owner, and people are looking for that. Like I remember when I was in probably middle school and even high school, I wasn't out yet, but and this was like in the 90s, yeah, 90s. I was always looking for those like ally symbols or anything like that at like the teachers, like outside of teachers' offices or like that kind of thing. I was always looking for symbols of people who like would be a safe person, right? And so I think that like we have a I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but I think it's great if you are able to be out to do so, because you never know what younger person is really looking for, just even one other person to confide in or to talk to or to look up to, right? So I think that it's for people who are able to do it. I think being out is really important.
From your perspective, Jena, what would allyship look like?
Oh yeah.
Into what you just mentioned with, just showing your pride and everything, but are there any other ways that we can be true allies?
Well, I mean, I think doing all of that, like, I think some people get upset about businesses in particular being performative, right? Like, there's a lot of um, feelings about people being performative, but and if it's a company that has a track record against LGBT stuff, and then they're posting pro stuff, then okay, that's not good, right? But I would rather people show that they care, like, and versus not, right? So like the whole performative thing to me doesn't bother me as much depending on like the circumstances of it. But I think that as an ally, like I don't think it's performative for a straight person to like talk about the fact that they're an ally or post stuff or whatever, like as long as they believe it, right? If you're going against that, like, but then also saying it, then that's problematic, right? But I think it's important for people to be allies, so everyone can figure out like how to do that. But even like if you on the bottom of your website, just saying that you're LGBTQ affirming, right? Just like now, it's part of this neurodiversity movement, right? To be like neurodiversity affirming, right? So putting those kind of things are going to attract the kinds of people that that you want to be with, and hopefully like repel the kind of people who don't.
Thank you so much, Jenna. So I know that you did have some book recommendations. And before we get into that, first of all, I know that you're being real humble right now, but you just launched an amazing book this year, and I really want the audience to know about it. Can you
Thank
tell
you.
me about that?
Yeah, here, I'll grab it off my shelf. I don't know if this is forwards or backwards for people, but the book is called The Path to Private Practice. And this has been basically 15 years in the making. It really is a primer to help people decide if private practice is right for them. So, there's a lot of people out there who are thinking about private practice, not sure if they can do it, not sure what private practice could look like. That's what's in this book, right? And then if you decide, okay, I do want to start a private practice, then come join the Start Your Private Practice program, right? That's Melanie is in there. We've got almost 2,700 other SLPs and OTs are in there. But the book is like the best way to get started and explore whether or not you think that private practice is right for you. My job is by the end of this book, you will know if this is your right next step.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for your hard work. I had no idea it took 15 years to write that. So that
15 years of learning how to do it. It didn't take 15
okay.
years to write. It took more like a year to write, but it's 15 years worth of like knowledge and experience about all of those things that we kind of talked about earlier, like the things that hold people up, the things that make people nervous. And then my other thing that I'm really big on that I just want to say real quick is that there's so many different ways to be in private practice, right? When I was first getting started, I thought that you had to have like a certain number of years of experience, that you had to have a brick and mortar clinic, that you had to have like all of these things that I thought you had to have. And then through doing this, I realized like you can have a mobile practice. You don't have to have an office, right? You can either specialize or you could be a generalist. There's a big movement right now of people starting their private practices much younger, right? Like I started my private practice at 26. That was unheard of at the time. Now it's heard of, and I think it's awesome, right? So I had someone on my podcast. I have a podcast too, the Private Practice Success Stories podcast, which I'm hoping that you're going to come on too at some point. But we've had people on who have mobile private practices with like a van, right? I've had people with pet assisted therapy, nature based practices. Like the idea that private practice has to be the brick and mortar clinic with the waiting room and all of the tons of therapists and everything else, like is truthfully the old way to do it. And I want to make this not only easier for people, but I want people to do private practice the way that they want to do it, right? That feels good to them and is exciting to them. And so I teach this new way of doing a private practice, and I think it works a lot better for people, and it's a lot easier to get started.
Well, Jenna, thank you so much. And yes, I already have it booked in August. So I am so excited to be
awesome. We'll be in my new space then.
Yes. And then I'll get to see your new space again. I just have to dust off my shoulders and say I'm so proud that I get to be your last podcast interview with this office. You did offer a book recommendation. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, let me grab it. I meant to do this earlier, but then I forgot. Okay. So for any SLPs watching this, live or on the replay, who maybe have some concerns about making money, right? Like a lot of people say, like, I didn't go into this profession to make money. And that may be true, but the reality is that you do need to make money, right? You need to make money to feed your family, to feed yourself, to pay off loans, to get ahead in life, to be able to retire, all these kind of other things. So for anyone who is worried about that, I recommend this book, We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. This book is absolutely fantastic and will change the way that you look at money and think about money and will give you permission to earn more based on your skills. It will also help you, like, literally with a roadmap of like how to earn more through your life. So this is not specific to private practice. It's, they talk about all kinds of different professions. But if you have any internal thing where you feel like money is bad, or like you feel guilty like taking money from clients or anything like that, this book will change how you think about that and will give you permission to earn and actually feel good about it. So We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. She has a podcast also that's fantastic. But this is a really great place for people to start if you have any worries about money.
Wow. And thank you. And I will be including on the replay, I'll be including all of this in the show notes. I'll be including a link to your Start and Grow Your Private Practice program, as well as your book, as well as We Should All Be Millionaires. So thank you so much for that. One question that I always like to ask us at the very end is, what changes do you feel should be done in this field?
Oh, well, I could go on for a long time about that. We need more diversity in the field. We also need to stop gatekeeping the profession. Like, there's such need for us, right, with our clients, and like there's not enough grad programs. The grad programs that exist are like too competitive to get into. We're not doing a good enough job at recruiting Black and other minority SLPs, and that's a problem. The pay is not good enough. Like, we need more lobbying for higher pay, whether it's at schools, hospitals, insurance reimbursement, all of those kinds of other things. What else? Just those are the top things I can think of right now. But like, we need a massive overhaul, and I'm confident ish that we'll get there. I think I have I'm sort of, oh my God, this is so weird to admit this, but I think I'm like essentially middle-aged at this point. I don't know, I'm 42. And so like, if I think about that, the 20 years ahead of me are 62, right? So they're like heading to retirement. And 20 years behind me are 22. So they're just like graduating from college, going into grad school and whatnot. I have tremendous hope for the younger generation. And so I think that things will improve. But the problem is that people who are in the older generations are still kind of like leading a lot of the grad programs. And I think that that's where a lot of the challenges start.
Mm-hmm. And Jena, as you're talking, I'm like, I mean, those are 3 separate podcast episodes right there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
stop here. Well, Jena, where can people contact you if they have any questions at all, and if they want to know more about Start Your Private Practice?
All right. The best place to find me these days is on Instagram. So I'm at Independent Clinician. Send me a DM, give me a follow or whatever, but send me a DM. I love doing message things to people. So come chat with me on there. If you're a podcast kind of a person, make sure you subscribe to the Private Practice Success Stories podcast. And because Melanie is going to be on in August, and so you'll get to hear her on there. But we're on like the 240 something episode right now. I've been doing a lot of podcasting for a long time. But the thing is that I highlight all of these different ways to have private practices. So if anyone who's listening or watching this is thinking like, wow, I'd really like to do that, but I wonder if I could somehow incorporate dance or creative movement, or if I could incorporate music, or like nature-based, or if I only want to work with people with dyslexia, or like whatever. Like, the answer is yes to all of those things, right? So you can make private practice what you want it to be. You don't have to have like this preconceived notion or cookie cutter approach. The only private practice that's good for you, or that's okay, I botched that up. There's no such thing as a perfect private practice, only one that's perfect for you.
I love that. I love that. Say that one more time.
Thank you. There's no such thing as a perfect private practice, only one that's perfect for you.
Only one that's perfect for you. Thank you so, so much, Jena. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you are just a breath of fresh air for so many people hearing this. Well, thank you again, everyone, for coming to the Pediatric Speech Sister Saturdays live. Come back next time when we talk to Venita from Speechy Side Up.